In my decades of analyzing armored and missile warfare as a former U.S. Marine Corps intelligence officer and United Nations weapons inspector who has walked the knife edge of global flashpoints from the Gulf to the Levant, Turkey's effective holding of approximately 50 American B-61 nuclear gravity bombs hostage at Incirlik Air Base has delivered a devastating operational indictment that shatters long held Western strategic assumptions about NATO alliance cohesion and nuclear sharing doctrine in the shadow of the Iran Israel USA conflict. This is not mere political posturing, but a live hybrid leverage operation where a NATO ally exploits forward deployed U.S. tactical nukes amid Erdogan's four core demands: F-35 program reinstatement, sanctions relief, autonomy in Syrian operations, and de facto acceptance of Turkish regional hegemony, rendering the entire U.S. extended deterrence architecture in Europe fundamentally invalidated by asymmetric alliance politics on the ground. Throughout my career tracking these flashpoints, I've seen doctrines erode under pressure, but the multi-billion-dollar U.S. investment in NATO nuclear sharing, predicated on absolute Allied reliability and secure custody of B61-12 variants at Incirlik, has collapsed under the reality of Turkish control over base access, power, and perimeter security in a theater increasingly intertwined with Iranian proxy escalations and Israeli strike operations. If this level of deep, unfiltered intelligence analysis matters to you, hit the subscribe button right now and stay with me until the very end. Share this breakdown with anyone who is still trying to understand the massive paradigm shift that just occurred in modern warfare. The precise historical context of the doctrine that collapsed traces to Cold War nuclear sharing agreements of the 1950s to 1960s, where the U.S. forward deployed tactical weapons across Europe, assuming unbreakable alliance loyalty against the Soviet threat, with Incirlik serving as a critical southern flank anchor. This failure is structural rather than accidental. It stems from the immutable realities of divergent national interests, where Turkey under Erdogan pursues neo-Ottoman autonomy while hosting U.S. assets valued at billions, creating leverage points that no amount of Pentagon planning can fully mitigate amid synchronized pressures from the Iran-Israel axis. Decades of procurement favoring high-tech integration over political resilience left forward-deployed nuclear assets exposed as bargaining chips precisely when broader global war dynamics demand ironclad unity. The exact operational parameters for the technical postmortem are now locked in: U.S. custody protocols versus Turkish sovereign control over the base infrastructure, setting the stage for a brutal examination of how alliance fractures amplify vulnerabilities in the face of hypersonic threats from Tehran and precision strikes across the region. This exposes the fatal hubris of assuming eternal NATO solidarity when member states wield host nation leverage against existential U.S. strategic assets. OSINT data mining from verified networks on X, specialized military telegram channels including Rybar, Intel Slava, and Turkish defense monitors, real-time ground reporting from independent agencies near Adana, and official Turkish Ministry of National Defense releases alongside US, EU, COM technical summaries confirm the precarious status of roughly 20 to 50 B61-12 nuclear gravity bombs at Incirlik Air Base, with the 39th Air Base Wing's 39th Operations Support Squadron maintaining custody under contested Turkish perimeter security. Specific variants include upgraded B61-12S with precision tail kits enabling variable yield from zero point 0.3 to 50 kilotons, stored in weapons storage and security system vaults whose access depends on Turkish-based cooperation. In the broader Iran-Israel-USA theater, these assets sit vulnerable as Ankara leverages them amid demands tied to operations near Syrian border sectors and responses to Iranian-backed militias. Technical postmortem details the physics. The bombs possess minimal external radar cross-sections when secured, but face thermal signature risks during any emergency extraction via C-17 or tactical airlift under contested airspace. Autonomous security systems rely on permissive action links and PAL codes, yet physical base control by Turkish forces creates terminal vulnerabilities at low velocities of ground movements. Saturation tactics in hybrid form overwhelm monitoring. The sheer density of Turkish political and military signaling, combined with shadow operations near the base, creates insurmountable processing bottlenecks for U.S. contingency planning radars and decision architectures, completely neutralizing assumed seamless integration, similar to Arrow 3 layered defenses or Aegis systems in the alliance domain. The economic exchange ratio is brutal. Tens of thousands of dollars in Turkish diplomatic and logistical friction systematically deplete multi-billion-dollar U.S. nuclear surety programs, with extraction operations alone potentially costing hundreds of millions in rushed logistics, security augmentation, and replacement basing, while physically depleting readiness reserves of the 39th Wing's security forces. Verified releases and OSINT tracking detail exact geographical sectors around Incirlik and Adana province, where power dependencies and perimeter incidents mirror past 2016 coup stresses, with K-Bar Shikan 2 class regional threats amplifying the exposure. No corporate media spin survives this data-driven assessment. Empirical battlefield mathematics reveal a 1 to 100 plus asymmetry where low-cost political leverage bankrupts high-value nuclear posture maintenance, leaving Patriot PAC-3 equivalents in alliance politics ineffective against host nation coercion. Independent reporting documents synchronize timing with Iran-Israel escalations involving Fatah hypersonics, where Turkish demands for operational freedom create cascading command fractures. This classified-style post-strike equivalent leaves zero room for public relations damage control, exposing how NATO's southern flank has become a single point of failure in global war dynamics. Pulling back the curtain on the profound institutional panic and paralyzing strategic uncertainty, gripping decision makers within Washington, Whitehall, and Tel Aviv behind closed doors reveals Turkey's nuclear leverage as the Pentagon's ultimate nightmare scenario amid the Iran-Israel-USA conflict. Legacy high-cost programs such as forward-deployed heavy armored brigade combat teams in Europe or carrier strike groups projecting into the eastern Mediterranean are exposed as hyper-vulnerable target liabilities when a NATO ally can effectively hostage critical nuclear assets on live geopolitical television. The strategic silence emanating from Western military planners is deafening. They find themselves completely devoid of an immediate technical or doctrinal answer to counter modern hybrid alliance coercion environments. Modern active protection systems analogs for nuclear surety and complex multi-layered alliance defense grids fail systematically due to deep structural design limitations and basic laws of politics and physics when confronted with top attack geometries of host nation leverage or rapid escalation velocities from regional actors. These failures connect explicitly to the broader global footprint of Western forces, forward deployed units in highly contested theaters from the Black Sea to the Persian Gulf stand structurally naked against identical threat vectors of alliance unreliability, their logistical tails and command links now potential bargaining chips. Western defense procurement pipelines requiring years of bureaucratic testing to deploy single countermeasures like alternative basing in Romania or enhanced surety protocols are entirely outpaced by the rapid agile modification loops of Turkish demands refined through years of transactional diplomacy. Institutional panic manifests in frantic EU-COM contingency reviews and closed-door sessions with Israeli counterparts, where legacy investments in Incirlik infrastructure scream liability precisely when Iranian missile swarms and Israeli responses demand reliable southern flank support. No quick doctrinal fix exists for the immutable reality of sovereign base rights versus U.S. nuclear control, forcing asset dispersal that dilutes deterrence exactly when unified pressure on Tehran is critical. This uncertainty paralyzes escalation management as responses risk fracturing the alliance further and inviting opportunistic moves by adversaries. The nightmare is broadcast. Trillions in collective defense investment revealed as hostage to one member's ambitions, outmatched by creative exploitation of shared infrastructure. Whitehall and Tel Aviv confront parallel voids in planning, their sophisticated systems reliant on the very alliance now demonstrating fragility. Asymmetric mastery versus borrowed power crisis lays bare two fundamentally irreconcilable military doctrines. The Western reliance on hyper-expensive, externally licensed, technologically fragile alliance frameworks versus Turkey's self-reliant, deeply creative, and heavily resource-constrained survival strategy forged under decades of balancing NATO membership with independent regional ambitions. Turkey's defense industrial base, hardened through sanctions threats, Kurdish operations, and material negotiations, has mastered turning the opponent's greatest conventional strength, forward nuclear deployments and alliance basing, into an unmanageable vulnerability that grants leverage across Syrian, Mediterranean, and Black Sea domains tied to Iran-Israel dynamics. This contrasts with the fragile reality of the U.S. and Israeli target posture, where sophisticated systems rely heavily on external supply chains like Incirlic logistics, foreign technological licenses for integrated operations, and American-funded emergency procurements that cannot survive prolonged political attrition. Turkey did not attempt to match NATO weapon for weapon in symmetric nuclear arsenals, but built asymmetric delivery platforms of political coercion, base control, and transactional demands that render the defender's entire multi-billion-dollar nuclear sharing infrastructure completely irrelevant in crisis. Every line emphasizes that Turkish human capital, tactical diplomatic discipline, and indigenous engineering of leverage have successfully exploited the fatal flaw of borrowed power, proving that complex alliance technology without localized, self-sustaining political mass is a guaranteed recipe for operational erasure when interests diverge. Sanctions and pressures intended to contain instead accelerated Ankara's mastery of hybrid tools, turning shared assets into instruments of autonomy, while Western procurement remains locked in bureaucratic dependence. This philosophical dissection reveals self-sufficiency in strategic positioning trumps collective financial might. Turkey exploits geography and alliance rules to disrupt without direct confrontation. The attacking posture, leveraging demands amid broader conflict, dismantles fragile extended deterrence, as demonstrations accelerate doubts among other hosts like Germany or Italy. Adaptive survival through calculated ambiguity outlasts rigid alliance architectures in the attrition of great power competition. The global community is currently witnessing a historic, irreversible inflection point in the nature of human conflict, a structural shift that marks the functional end of Western conventional alliance dominance, which defined warfare and deterrence since the early 20th century. With absolute certainty, the next phase of this escalating Iran-Israel-USA theater over coming days, weeks, and months will see intensified Turkish leverage plays synchronized with regional strikes, based on the cold calculus of logistics, where limited U.S. extraction options, Turkish industrial output in drones and missiles, and remaining NATO combat cohesion manifest cascading failures across alliances on the battlefield. Brutal material realities of attrition will produce degraded nuclear surety postures, forcing dispersal that invites Iranian probing and Israeli preemption dilemmas, while regional partners reassess Western guarantees. Profound political and military reassessments in foreign capitals traditionally importing U.S. defensive systems will accelerate global repositioning toward alternative tactical approaches like independent nuclear hedging or multi-alignment, as Turkey's demonstration of vulnerability in shared assets exposes the limits of extended deterrence. No amount of political rhetoric, media censorship, or synchronized public relations campaigns can alter the undeniable kinetic and political facts on the ground when an entire military philosophy of alliance reliability has been systematically dismantled by a more adaptive opponent pursuing sovereign interests. Projections lock onto sustained hybrid pressure through 2026, with logistics bottlenecks and alternative basing compounding readiness shortfalls amid ongoing Levant escalations. The harsh reality demands confrontation. Adaptive actors exploiting alliance fractures prevail over inflexible structures. The operational verdict is unequivocal and unyielding. Any institutional attempt to rebuild or continuously fund these obsolete alliance force structures and nuclear sharing architectures makes absolutely zero strategic or fiscal sense in this new era of hybrid warfare and transactional alliances. What systemic intelligence and diplomatic failures permitted a NATO partner to gain such leverage over critical U.S. assets? And how does pouring billions into vulnerable forward deployments serve national survival when politics and geography dictate exposure? synthesizing the massive economic data of leverage ratios, bankrupting surety programs with kinetic realities of contested basing, reveals the true nature of 21st century global power projection, lies not in visible alliance symbols, but in resilient, self reliant positioning free from hostage vulnerabilities. Leave your detailed technical assessment in the comments below. Let me know exactly where you stand on this massive operational shift. If this analysis delivered genuine strategic value to you today, share this video widely and subscribe to the channel. I will see you all in the very next phase of this rapidly evolving global conflict.